here at the Clifton Institute is that beavers live here. That is my personal favorite animal that lives right here out on these ponds, and I hope that we're going to find some evidence of beavers' presence here at the Clifton Institute on our hike. So,
hi everyone, I'm Miss Eleanor and I work here at the Clifton Institute with Miss Alison. One of my favorite parts about working here is getting to be outside with kids and exploring the field station. So while we can't do that in person, I'm looking forward to getting out there virtually with you this afternoon and seeing what we find. So let's go along.
look what we found! We are hiking around the upper pond now, and we came across these stumps that look a little bit pencil shaped. You can see that there's a pointy tip to each one, and if you get a closer look you can see marks and texture in the wood here, which comes from the animal who chewed these trees down, my favorite, the beaver.
I'm listening to the birds, and one of my favorite birds is singing back in there. I hope you can hear it. He's saying, "Sweet, sweet, penny, penny, sweet, sweet." Let's see if he does it again. There he goes. "Sweet, sweet, penny, penny, sweet, sweet." And it's a beautiful blue bird called the indigo bunting. There he goes again. "Sweet, sweet, penny, penny, sweet, sweet." That means summer's here. So if you come out here for a walk or somewhere else, keep your ears open for a little bird saying, "Sweet, sweet, penny, penny, sweet, sweet."
We're still here at the upper pond, but we have arrived at 2 of the 5 beaver lodges on our property, and I am going to check one of the camera traps, which you're going to get a closer look of where the camera is in just a minute. But there is a beaver lodge right here on the shore, and there is another beaver lodge out there on the island, and just a minute ago we saw a really big snapping turtle swimming around out there. So we're going to keep our eyes out for the turtle, we're going to check this camera trap, and then I'm going to share some of the photos with you guys that the camera caught. So come on a little bit closer. Oh, there's also a bunch of fish in the water. So it's pretty shallow here, right by the beaver lodge, but the door to the lodges are underneath the water, so beavers are really good swimmers. Here we go. I'm looking for the turtle. There's some ripples out there. That might be it. And it's a good thing I'm wearing my rubber boots today, because to check this camera, I gotta get into the water. So here's the camera. Anytime an animal moves in front of the camera, it snaps a picture so that we can tell what the beavers are up to out here, but also all the other different animals that share habitat with the beavers. So we've gotten pictures of more than 20 different species of animals that also move back and forth right at this little spot in the pond. So I'm going to open it up. Last time I did this, there was a really neat spider inside. Yep, still lives there. And it is still working. That's great. So I'm going to turn off the camera and then take out the old memory card, which I will look at the pictures later. And then I have a new memory card here that I'm going to put inside the camera. Make sure the batteries are still working. That's important. Yep. And then hit arm camera. So in 10 seconds from now, it's going to start taking pictures again. That means the next time I check this camera, there's going to be pictures of Miss Eleanor with her camera. So, right behind you here is a really close look at the beaver lodge. They build their homes out of sticks. They've chewed the bark off of lots of these sticks because that is a part of their diet. Can you imagine eating tree bark? But they also eat lots of other types of plants. And you can see almost like right in front of you on the ground there, the beavers also construct with mud. So I have camera trap pictures of them carrying big armfuls of mud and grass and plant material and then patting it down onto the lodge, which helps keep them safe from predators, and it keeps them cool in the summer and warm in the winter. They're very good little builders. Before we leave the beaver lodge here, I wanted to do one more thing. Sometimes when I'm out here checking the camera, I stop and I listen really carefully, and I can actually hear little tiny like squeals and chirps coming from inside of the lodge. So the beavers might be inside right now, and will you be quiet with me for just a minute and see if we can hear anything? Here we go. I hear only the geese behind me and the other birds today. But sometimes, if you're really quiet, you can hear the beavers inside the lodge.
And Miss Allison already mentioned all the different animals that use this lodge as a launching pad into the pond. They come here for all sorts of different reasons, but it's also starting to be good habitat for new plants. There are baby plants, and these are going to be a plant called jewelweed or touch-me-not in a few months. So that they're changing the habitat for not just the animals, but the plants here on the pond as well.
This is very exciting. I don't know if you all can see this, but there are 4 probably painted turtles. That's what they're called. That's a type of turtle that lives here in the water, but they like to sunbathe out on those branches that you can see sticking out of the water right now. And normally they are so skittish that any person walking by or even getting remotely close to them, they dive into the water. So this is a treat. Can you guys count all 4 of these turtles? Because we're about to walk down this trail and they are gonna slide into the water. Maybe that's why they call them sliders. And then there were 3. I didn't think this was going to be a suspenseful hike, did you? Oh, bye turtles.
All right, so we are out in one of our very special habitats. And so far on our field trip, we haven't really talked about what a habitat is, but it's a place where different plants and animals live, and there's not just one type of habitat. There are lots of different types of habitats, and in each habitat, there are different sets of plants and animals that live there. And usually the way that we describe a habitat is by the characteristic plants that live there. So you can think about the woods that are full of really big, strong trees. And in this habitat, there are barely any trees, but there are lots and lots of grasses. So we call this a grassland. It's a very special habitat that there used to be more of, and now there aren't so many grasslands because people often leave them alone, so they're turning into forests, or it's a good place to put buildings. There are a few different reasons that grasslands are disappearing, so we're very proud that we have a grassland here.
I almost stepped over this amazing find. Can you all see what's on the ground in front of me? You might call it poop, but the scientific word for animal poop is scat, and this is a beautiful specimen of scat. So there's two separate parts here. It's looking pretty fresh because it still looks a little bit moist. I'm not going to touch it, but we're gonna look at it and we're gonna try to make a guess of what animal left this scat here. So size is a good clue. This was a pretty big animal, and we can also look at what the animal was eating by looking a little closer at the scat. And on this piece over here, if you look close enough, and I hope you can see this in the video, can you tell what this scat is full of here? It looks like hair to me. So this is an animal that is eating other animals as part of its diet, or maybe all of its diet. I'm guessing by size this might be a black bear. We know that they live here. Miss Eleanor, do you have a guess?
A big animal that eats other animals. Could it be a coyote, or is it too big?
It looks so big to me, but if there is a really big coyote out here, it could be. So if you get really into scat science, you would look at things like how many segments are in part of one piece, and how the ends of the scat are either like really tapered and pointy, or if they're kind of like more like little round pellets. But we can only guess, but this is a really cool find, and I'm glad I didn't step on it.
So we're off to our next habitat. We're gonna go try to find some critters in one of our streams, and you kids are gonna be the first that we've ever taken on one of our brand new trails. You might not even be able to see it behind me. It's so new, and we don't even have a name for it yet. So we're gonna go in here and see, and even before we go on the trail, you can maybe hear the water running. So come along and see what we can find.
Where we are going to not dive in. The creek's not deep enough for that, but we are going to muck around and see if we can catch any creek critters and identify them. So I don't know if you guys have ever looked for critters in the creek before, but the things that I like to think about when I'm thinking about where these little macroinvertebrates live is, I know that they live on the bottom of the creek, or they like to hide under rocks. They also like spots where they're getting some oxygen in the water, which means a spot where it's a little bit bubbly, or you can see like little tiny rapids in the water. Also, you can hear the spots where that's happening farther up the creek there. So I'm gonna take my little hand net here, and I'm gonna put it downstream of a rock, maybe lift up the rock, maybe scoop the net around on the bottom, and then see what we get. So let's give it a try. Whoa, we've got something. I'm gonna put it in. Wow. Here, I will see if you can see that, and then we'll get out our ID cards in just a minute.
Whoa, That's pretty crazy looking. Which end is the head and which end is the tail?
So if you can see the tails,
Yeah, you can see them.
count them, because that's actually an important identifying feature of these little macros.
I see. 1, 2, 3.
Good counting, Miss Eleanor.
Thanks.
So we're gonna keep our mystery critter in that little container for just a minute while I do a few more tries with the net here. So I'm lifting up rocks, scooping. Oh, wow. Check this out. It's a mollusk of some sort. I've never seen one this big
Cool.
in any of our creeks yet. So I'm here with one of the critters that we found. Does this look like a critter to you? Oh, he's coming out! He's coming out! Yes! Did you guys see that? So this is a mollusk, which is another word for an animal that lives inside of its two shells that are hinged together at the kind of the thickest part right here. And do you see the animal is coming out of the two shells right now? So this is either a mussel or a clam. We don't actually know. Here's a view of, oh my goodness, this is so cool. So there is the little critter living inside of this shell, and you can see it's two halves of the shell coming together there. I am gonna get this little guy back in some water, but that is a cool find. It's about maybe the size of a quarter. I've never found one that big here before. So I'm gonna put this one back in the water, say goodbye to our mollusk friend. All right, and then we're gonna take a look at the other critters that we found. So there are, oh dear, there's some interesting stuff going on in here. Okay, so there are 3 little macroinvertebrates in here. Pretty similar looking, all 3 of them, to the first one that you saw earlier. So these 2 are in a little bit of a tangle here, but see if you can count the tails. It looks to me like all 3 of these little critters have 3 tails. And then I don't know if you can see close enough to count their legs, but they do each have 6 legs, except for this poor guy over here who might be missing some legs. And I have some identification cards here for other macroinvertebrates that have 3 tails. So here's an example. This one has feathery tails, so we would have to look a lot closer at the tails of the ones that we caught to see if they match up with this. This one also has some feathery tails. And here's a similar looking insect with only 2 tails, so that's something different. So I will say that the 3-tailed macroinvertebrates that we usually find in creeks like this are mayfly larvae, which means that they, this is the part of their life cycle that happens under the water, but they will eventually emerge, they will metamorphosize and grow wings and become mayflies that fly around in the air. So a lot of the critters that you find in the water, like mosquitoes we're pretty familiar with, they hatch in the water and their larvae survive in the water, and then they turn into the mosquitoes that fly around. So that's a really cool thing about just getting in the creek and looking to see what you can find, because you always learn something new about the world around you that you might not already know. We found another cool find here along the edge of the creek. Has anyone before ever seen these little chimneys made out of mud, like you can see right here? So normally if you find these, they are near water or in kind of a low-lying spot that gets wet pretty often. And an animal actually created this little mud chimney by tunneling into that hole there and then kind of pushing up the dirt as it dug. And Does anyone know what critter might be under there right now? This is a crayfish chimney, or a crawdad chimney.
Okay, we made it to another one of the habitats that are here on the Clifton Institute field station. It's called a vernal pool. And that means that the pool is only full of water during the spring, and at other times of year it is so hot and dry that it dries up. So that means that fish can't live in there because they need water all of the time. So it's a safe place for amphibians, so that's frogs and salamanders, to come and lay their eggs in the early spring. And the eggs will hatch, and the little baby frogs and salamanders will live in the pool while it's still wet. And then as it dries up, they'll turn into adults and they'll go back and live in the forest. So we talked about some of the special birds that live in our grasslands. We found some special critters in some of our streams. And this is another special habitat that has unique animals that we can't find anywhere else. And plants too. So we have a big cottonwood here next to the pool that only lives in very wet places. There are some pawpaw trees on the other side of the pond that also like to live in places where the soil is pretty wet. So it's neat to try to go to all the different habitats and see all the special plants and animals that live in different places around the field station. Last step on our tour of the field station, we are here in another habitat which we call shrublands. And it's not quite grass, it's not quite forest, it's somewhere in between. It might not look like much, but it's actually a really valuable habitat. Kind of like the grasslands, they are disappearing, so we're really proud that we have shrublands here that can be home to all sorts of different plants and animals. Even as it's starting to rain, I hear all sorts of birds around me. I see really interesting plants, so it's a cool habitat to come and check out when you can.